Hello my friends and welcome back. This is Luis and today I will teach you how to factorize a specific kind of polynomials, saving sometimes in comparison to other methods. Now, be careful with this. Remember, math, just like life, is about choosing your best option. So this is not the only way that you could actually do it, but it's going to be a tool to use whenever you feel is the best moment. So first of all, what is a polynomial? Well, it is a mathematical expression that contains two or more terms, which includes constants, variables, and exponents. We have 3x plus 5, x squared plus 4x minus 8, negative 3x cubed plus 3xy plus y squared plus 7x minus 5. So as you can see, there's unlimited options to create a polynomial. We're gonna focus in a second degree polynomial. So what is a degree in the first place? The degree of the polynomial is determined by the highest exponent of its variables. So let's see the examples and we will find out how to focus on this. 3x squared plus 4x plus 3. First of all, what is a variable? It's something that we don't know yet. So that's why we use letters like x, y, z, or whatever you prefer. The numbers that are multiplying each of the variables are called coefficients. And some of those variables have exponents. And some of those variables have exponents. In our first example, we have 3x squared. And if we compare each one of those terms, we will realize that the squared is the highest exponent of all the terms included in that example. The second example is the same thing. It doesn't matter if we have a coefficient before the variable that is negative, positive, it could be a fraction. The only thing that matters is the exponent. And the third one, again, we have a second degree polynomial. Now, how are we going to factorize this? Well, let's do some examples then. X squared plus 7x minus 8. So I know that some of you guys know the diamond method, or you can use the quadratic formula. And my suggestion for you guys is to use this tool, and the quadratic formula is going to be our last resource. It is not because it's a bad method, it's more because it's easier to get a wrong answer. So back to this example. We realize that we have a third term that is not multiplying any variable. So we're going to focus on that one, the term that is on the last. The term that is on the last position. What are the factors of 8? That means what combinations can we have of numbers, whole numbers, that when I multiply them gives me back 8? Well, 8 can be obtained if you multiply 1 times 8, 2 times 4, 4 times 2, and 8 times 1. And as you can see, 2 times 4 is the same thing as 4 times 2. 1 times 8 is the same thing as 8 times 2. So actually, we only have two combinations, 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. Those are my possible combinations. So I'm going to be really interested in how am I going to use these numbers. The next thing that you have to visualize is the sign of the last number, the sign of the third term. 8 has a negative sign, and the only way to obtain a negative number through multiplication is having a positive and a negative number combined. That means that if I need negative 8, I could use positive 1 times negative 8, or negative 1 times positive 8. This means that to select one combination, I must assign a positive sign to one number and negative sign to the other. The selection of those numbers should be related to the middle term, which in this exercise is 7x, positive 7x. My possible combinations are 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. The only logical option is to use 1 and 8 because the difference between these numbers is 7. So this is the structure of the procedure. We are going to use x and x underneath x squared. And I want you to remember that if you multiply x times x is equal to x squared. And the last term, we're going to use positive 8 and negative 1 in that order. Right now, don't worry if you didn't realize right away which numbers you should use. That's going to take a little more practice. The only way that I can be really sure that the combination that I selected is the one that is going to give me my answer is to use this cross multiplication. So follow this arrow and multiply x times negative 1. X times negative 1 is negative 1x. All right, so I'm going to write it down right on the right. I'm going to do the same thing for the other x, follow the second line, follow this line right here, x times 8 is positive 8x. So now I have two terms, positive 8x and negative 1x. I'm gonna add them. When I add them, I have positive 7x. And as you can see, the number that I had in this or after this step is the same thing that I have in the term that lays in the middle of the polynomial. If that happens, that means that I did it the right way. So now, x squared plus 7x minus 8 is the same that x plus 8 times x minus 1. And as you can see, to write the answer, I am reading straight lines. X plus 8 is one of the factors and x minus 1 is the other factor. The cross multiplication is only for finding the middle term. When we give the answer, we read it in straight lines. X plus 8 times x minus 1. Whenever we have two numbers, two terms, or two expressions that are multiplying each other and the result is 0, one of them should be 0. So the way to obtain the values of x that satisfies this equation is to make each one of the factors equal to 0. When you make x plus 8 equals to 0, the only possible value for x is negative 8. Same thing for x minus 1 equals 0, x should be 1. If I want to double check my solutions, I can plug them in the original polynomial. So for example, x equals 1, 1 squared is 1, plus 7 times 1 is 8, minus 8 equals to 0. I invite you to replace x equals negative 8, and you will realize that the answer is going to be 0 as well. Let's do another example then. My possible combinations are 1 and 6. The combinations comes from the third term. The third term is positive 6. All right, so we have 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Those are the combinations that creates the number 6 when we multiply the numbers inside of each combination. You have to realize that 6 is positive and the middle term is negative. The middle term is negative 5x. So that means that in my combination, I need negative numbers because you realize that at the end, you are gonna cross multiply numbers, you are gonna group them together. So it's really important for you to find a relationship between the sign of the middle term and the third term. So this should make us think about using two negative numbers for positive 6, which makes sense, right? If you multiply a negative number times another negative number, the solution is going to be positive. So you can use negative 1 times negative 6 and you will obtain positive 6. Or negative 2 times negative 3 and you will get positive 6. So now try to solve it, try to use both combinations, and you will start to find a pattern. If you use 1 and 6, at the end, whenever you do the cross multiplication and combine the terms, you will get negative 7x, which is not the same term that I have in the middle. So my combination is 2 and 3. And as you can see, follow each one of those lines. X times negative 2 equals negative 2x. X times negative 3 equals negative 3x. We already know that we have to add them to realize if we have the middle term, and in this case, works perfectly. That means that the terms of this polynomial are x minus 3 and x minus 2. Always remember, the cross multiplication is just to find the middle term. Whenever we present the answer, we'll read it in straight lines. X minus 3 times x minus 2. If x minus 3 equals 0, then the equation is solved. That means that x could be 3. If x minus 2 is 0, then x is going to be 2. That's why we have our solutions as x equals positive 3, x equals positive 2. If you want to double check, please just plug in the numbers in the original polynomial and you will figure it out that that solution is going to be 0. Third example. And this is where I think that this method has an advantage because we now have a coefficient that is multiplying x squared. The procedure is going to be exactly the same. We're going to find the combinations of the third term, the number that it's by itself, which is 15. And those combinations are 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. There's no other combinations. Realize that 15 is a negative number and the middle term is also negative. So that means that one of the numbers will be negative and the other will be positive. Makes total sense. If you use, for example, 1 and 15, you will need negative 1 times positive 15 equals to negative 15, or positive 1 and negative 15 equals to negative 15. One of the numbers of the combination should be negative. If one of the numbers is positive and the other is negative, That means at the end, when you do the cross multiplication, you are going to subtract. You're going to have like a subtraction. So 1 and 15 wouldn't be my first choice. I'm going to use 3 and 5. I'm going to use 2x and x, not like the previous example that we had only x times x. This time I have 2x times x, which is 2x squared. Use whole numbers. Don't complicate things. Don't use fractions. Just go for the easiest way. Now, I have to realize that negative 7x is the term that I'm looking for. So if I multiply 2x times negative 5, I will obtain negative 10x. If I multiply x times positive 3, I will obtain positive 3x. If I add them, I will obtain negative 7x. So that means that 2x plus 3 is one of the terms and the other term is x minus 5. And from that point, I can solve it for x. X equals negative 3 halves or negative 1.5 and x equals positive 5. So the method that I just showed you is used to factorize second-degree polynomials only. This should be our first option before opting for another method like the quadratic formula. With practice, you will be able to identify the combinations mentally and double-check the procedure with the cross multiplication. If you don't have practice, please do it. And if you don't find the negative 7x at the end of this procedure, that is fine. That means that there is another combination that works better. If you want to be successful, not only in math, but in life, you need to put effort. You need to work for it. This knowledge cannot be learned just by watching videos. You have to do it by yourself. And remember that this process of learning takes time. Be patient. Don't do it for the grades. Do it for your self-growth. So have a great day. I believe in you. You should believe in yourself. I know you can do it. See you next time.